Hello, everybody. It is Sunday evening in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our Steelers postgame show by Post-Gazette sports columnist Paul Zeise. After a big Steelers victory, I guess it was technically a narrow victory, a one-possession game, but they scored a lot of points today, Paul, which is something we have not gotten used to with this team. I think the other side of that is you gave up a lot of points. I think there'll be some questions about that, but what's your top line reaction to this victory against the Bengals today?
Well, they won the game they needed to win. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered in this game is they got out of it with one more point than the Bengals had. And so it doesn't matter, really, there's a lot we're going to talk about and a lot we're going to break down. But I look at it, they just needed to win this game. It was one of those games where you go there. It kind of was a crazy game in a lot of ways. A lot of weird things happened in this game. You knew that the Bengals were going to be able to score points because they're good offensively. I mean, frankly, the defense just basically they made two really big plays, and that was probably the difference in the game. Well, actually three, but the one really didn't matter because the interception to Dante Jackson, they had maybe the worst series of the year right after that interception to Dante Jackson. But the other two, obviously, were really, really big. The TJ Watt strip, stopped probably what was going to be a scoring drive. And then the scoop and score, by Herbig. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes you just have to make big plays. You're not going to stop a team consistently. Those two guys, those two receivers they have are really good. The quarterback is really, really good. You just have to take advantage of the fact that, hey, it's the Bengals. They're going to make mistakes, and even down to the end, Adam, I mean, everybody on their planet, including both announcers, knew that Justin Fields was going to keep the ball and run. And whoever was the two guys that are out there on the outside, they've got to know, listen, if we get to the middle to try and make a tackle, it means that, Najee Harris is already 5 or 6 yards down the field. So us going that way, just running there, just stay outside and contain, and you probably stop the play. So, nevertheless, again, I thought the Steelers did a lot of good things. Some things that weren't so good, but at the end of the day, all you're looking to do is win.
Yes, that is the top line, and I think they really needed this one after – I don't think you can go 0-2 against the Bengals and Browns and still, have hopes of winning the division with the tough schedule they have remaining. So they got one of the two. I think they're kind of back on track here as they look toward the back half of the schedule. We're going to get into all of this. Lots to talk about. A crazy day from Russell Wilson, one of the best of his career. George Pickens, the good and the bad we saw today with him. We're going to talk about Joey Porter Jr. I can see you guys in the comments already wanting to talk about all the penalties that were on him. Before we do, just want to thank another sponsor for this episode of the podcast, Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started with planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul, I'm going to get into it with Russell Wilson here at the top. Do you think that they could have won a game like this with any quarterback that they've had on the field since Ben Roethlisberger retired? I don't. I don't think any of them had the potential to go off the way that he did today. He looked like, other than the pick six, he looked like a guy who's going to be in Canton someday and looks like he still has, the juice to be a major plus and not just, kind of a veteran game manager type guy who can hit a few deep shots sometimes.
No, I mean, they were never equipped to win a game like this, before Russell Wilson arrived. Probably since before Ben Roethlisberger's injury. I mean, I have to go back and think about some of the games that Ben had probably 4 or 5 years leading up to his injury. But for the most part, this offense that they have right now with Russell Wilson is equipped to do things that they haven't been able to do. And I'd have to say 4 or 5 years, maybe 5, 6 years actually. The one cautionary thing I will say is if you remember, the best game that Kenny Pickett had last year was against the Bengals, and Mason Rudolph went crazy against the Bengals. So this is a horrible defense. That's not to take away what Russell Wilson did, but I do think that we should temper a little bit of, going nuts over the fact that Russell Wilson went crazy against this defense because it's horrific. I think that's what did they say? This is the 5th game the Bengals have scored 30 points or more and lost this year. I mean, that takes a special talent to do.
Yeah, but this secondary didn't come in like completely horrific, Paul. I think the big problem for this defense is the inability to get a pass rush going. And I think you saw that today, because what is the biggest liability that you've got with Russell Wilson right now? It's getting out of sacks, avoiding sacks. And we saw that in Cleveland, and Cincinnati wasn't able to do that because their pass rush, other than Trey Hendrickson, is really, really bad. No one else can really get a ton of pressure, and he was able to carve them up on the back end for that reason. I think they were also banged up as well. But still, hey, 400 plus yards on the day. Haven't seen that since really, Ben Roethlisberger's heyday. I saw Green in the comments saying 2 years. Would you bring him back for 2 years for $28 million? I think that comes out to $14 million, Paul. I think people got to be honest with themselves. If you're saying $28 million for the annual term, I still think that's less than he could get. I think he's looking like a guy. He's not going to get a ton of length on the deal, but I think he could command somewhere north of 30, if not $40 million over 2 years because of the reduced commitment. The
going rate for an elite or top quarterback right now in the NFL is what, Adam? $56 million or something like that?
Yeah, over 50. It's flirting with $60 million.
Right. Yeah. Let me just look at it real quick here. So for those that are thinking the Steelers are going to get Russell Wilson for cheap, okay, Dak Prescott makes $60 million a year. Now, I'm not saying his age is he's younger and all that other stuff. I get it. They're not going to have to pay Russell Wilson back. But Adam, if he continues to do what he did today, if I'm his agent, I'm looking for 2 years, $80 million, and the Steelers have to pay it. I mean, that's all there is to it. This is the best quarterback they've had since Roethlisberger before his shoulder injury. And, to me, if you look at it, I see people in the comments saying that $30 million is average quarterback.
He's not an average quarterback right now, Paul.
But more importantly,
he's a top 10 type of guy.
Where would you put Derek Carr on the list?
Didn't he get a big deal?
He's at 37.5.
Yeah.
So let's that to me, if I'm Russell Wilson's agent, I look at $37.5 million for him, and I say that's where we're going to start. Okay, Josh Allen makes 43, fine. Mahomes makes 45, fine. Kirk Cousins makes 45. Okay. Kyler Murray makes 46. Yeah. If I'm Russell Wilson's agent, I'm sorry. I'm taking 2 years, $80 million. That's what I'm taking. I'm going to say, listen, Derek Carr makes $37 million. Daniel Jones was making $42 or $43 million. I mean, what are we talking about here? I know that, everybody thinks that everybody wants to play for the Steelers and they're going to take the discount and hooray for the Steelers. Look, guys want to get paid. That's why they play the game. And they want to get paid what they think they're worth. And so to me, I look at it and say, it's a good thing if he's at the end of this year able to command 2 years, $40 million each, 2 years, $80 million, because it means he will have had a really good year. Then what do they got? 5 or 6 games left, and then the playoffs. I mean, to me, and here's the thing, Adam. What if they win 2 playoff games? They win 2 playoff games. If I'm him, I'm looking for 2 years, $90 million. And I'm just telling you, I've heard and I've read this and I've done chats, obviously, and I've done, mailbags, and I'm on social media a lot and whatever. I've seen a lot of people with this idea that they're going to get Russell Wilson on the cheap. I mean, I just don't see any chance that happens.
No, a couple more games like this, Paul. I think, if they're going to keep him, it's going to cost a lot of money. And I'm not one to poo-poo that. You get the quarterback situation figured out for the next couple of years, and then you ask questions. You know what I mean? Then you figure everything else out, and you make everyone fit in around that. You're basically, I kind of feel like they're trying to re-extend the end of the Ben Roethlisberger career here, and how far Russ can go, we'll find out. But I think you got to at least treat these next couple of years like he can play, as he kind of showed today. Lots of other things to get into, Paul. I guess let's start with the offensive line. I thought they did a nice job of protection. Like we mentioned, this is not the best pass rush, that they're going to face this year, but I think it was kind of a, see the ball go through the hoop type of situation for this offensive line, and built a little bit of confidence today, even if you don't want to give them a ton of credit for the opponent.
Well, I mean, again, I think you have to give credit to the Steelers for what they did. They made big plays. I thought Russell Wilson was really good. I thought, when their defense needed to get a couple of stops, they made big plays to get stops. Their offense, they moved the ball almost at will. I mean, if you look at what they did on offense, Adam, I know they were playing a bad defense and all that other good stuff, but I mean, how many times do you see, what is it? What did they have? 500 yards, I think they had? Something like that? I think they had 500 total yards in this game.
I'm pulling up the team stats here. It's 520, Paul. 520. They outgained them 520 to 375.
How many teams have 520 yards in an NFL game? I mean, we see it in college games all the time, but that's different. In the NFL, you don't see very often teams putting 500 yards up. So, even if you're playing a bad defense, which let's make no mistake, the Bengals are awful, but you get a lot of credit for putting up 500 yards and 44 points. I mean, I guess 37, but because they had a scoop and score or whatever. But regardless, they scored 44 points in this game, and they had 500 plus yards of offense. I got to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot to critique about the offense. I think the other side of the ball is where we're going to spend probably a lot more time critiquing what went on.
Yes. Let's get into the one, I think, major area of critique for the offensive performance today was George Pickens, the penalties that he picked up in this one. A lot of people have been, upset by just kind of the way he has conducted himself in losses now in wins. These things are coming up, and do you have any reaction to this stuff beyond the obvious, Paul, in terms of this can't happen? And it felt like it was coming for a long time. Maybe the Steelers are lucky that the George Pickens knucklehead game is not going to end up costing them. They won the game, they got the job done, but you can't have that stuff, especially as we're getting toward playoff time. And he just seems to be getting more and more agitated.
Well, and his, this is what I say all the time. And I always used to say this about Antonio Brown. It's okay until the penalties start costing you. It's not, I don't think it's okay to get penalties, but you can live with, because he's such a good player, you can live with some of the nonsense that he does until it costs the Steelers. And frankly, it cost them a touchdown. I think the play where they threw it to him and he caught it and then did whatever he did with the machine gun thing or whatever, 15 yards back, then they don't get a first down and then they get the field goal block. So really it cost them 7 points, not just 4. There's no need for it. This is what I don't understand about these guys. You're a good player. You're a really good football player. You make plays that is probably, you can count on one hand guys in the NFL that could actually make the plays you make. I don't understand why you have to add to that by being a jackass. That's to me of what I've always said, is that you don't need that. I don't know how that helps George Pickens. And here's the other thing. He's going to get fined this week, because on top of the 2 knucklehead penalties he got, he punted the ball into the stands after he caught his first touchdown, and that's going to be a fine from the NFL. It's not a big fine. It's like a $500 fine or something, but he's actually going to get fined for a play where he didn't have a penalty. So I'm just telling you, when I look at George Pickens, he's got to grow up, period. I get it. It's an emotional game and all that stuff, but at some point, you got to know that kind of stuff is just not helping you win games.
Yeah, and I think the concern will be, and I wonder, Paul, what Cam Hayward, I don't know if you caught the camera there on the CBS broadcast at the end of the game, but Cam Hayward had his arm around George Pickens, seemed to be giving him some level of talking to, and I wonder if it was like, Definitely telling him don't go into the post-game media and say what you did last week about Cleveland. Don't be talking about Cam Taylor-Britt or whoever else. Don't be doing that kind of stuff either. And George Pickens was nodding, so I'll be curious to see what he has to say after the game. Unfortunately, we're doing this live after the game, so we can't see quite yet. But yeah, those things have to be cleaned up. Paul, what did you think of the – I'm just going to ask you what you thought of the officiating today, because it felt like quite an ump show to me. And I think it went both ways. At times, I think the Steelers were more on the short end of the stick, but I saw way more of Sean Hockley than I think I should have, which is, I mean, going back to when his dad was a ref, Paul, those Hockleys love to be on camera.
There were 20 penalties that were actually accepted in this game.
Yes.
There were probably, what would you estimate, 4 or 5 more that were declined. A couple of those, men downfield penalties were declined. I can think of another, like a holding call.
Two on Joey Porter that were declined.
Yeah, there's probably 5 or 6. So we're talking about, let's say there might have been 6 penalties that were declined in this game. We're talking about 26 flags thrown, right? I mean, I get it. You want them to call the games, and you want them to call penalties that are penalties, but it really, really felt in many, many ways like there were just going to be a flag on every single play. Yeah. I just didn't, and I think that's really difficult to watch. People, it's just difficult to watch because it makes the game choppy when they just keep throwing flag. And some of them, are legit. And I thought the flags on Porter were pretty legit. I mean, but there's some of these things where I'm watching the game and I'm like, man, you could call that on every single play if you wanted to. And that's where the frustration is.
Well, I think there were a lot of no calls too, Paul. And I think that's part of the frustration here is that they showed the whole package that CBS had cut together of Orlando Brown Jr. false starting on like half the plays. Didn't call any of those. Yeah, and they didn't call Cam Taylor-Britt on the pick 6 play for a penalty, and so it was. I thought it was inconsistent. I think they inserted themselves a lot, in the calls that they made and the calls that they did not. There wasn't any consistency. I think this is. I don't usually spend a lot of time on these shows, Paul, talking about the refs because you got to take the game out of the refs' hands ultimately, but. I think it was like you said, it was almost unwatchable at times, and the way things were chopped up. And usually, it's already 4:45. We usually start these shows pretty snappy after 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's how the game took so much longer because of all that crap. In addition to all the points scored. So, man, I thought it was a poorly played game. We'll probably talk about it a little bit more when we get to the defense and talk about Joey Porter. I guess let's wrap things up on offense. Just a couple of quick bullet points. Big day for Najee Harris, quite efficient for him. Pat Freiermuth was heavily involved again. Calvin Austin catches another touchdown. Any thoughts on any of those 3 guys and what they're bringing to the table for the Steelers late in the season here?
Well, it's amazing you get Russell Wilson throwing the ball, and all of a sudden these guys look confident, right? I think Van Jefferson has played reasonably well. Calvin Austin, didn't he get hurt today? Didn't he have
he was out for most of the second half.
He got knocked around, but I think he's coming into his own a little bit as a receiver. We're finally starting to see training camp Calvin Austin. We're finally starting to see that in the games, but it's amazing how much of that coincides with having a legitimate big-time quarterback. I mean, you can say whatever you want to say about you can say whatever you want to say about Russell Wilson. And, there was a lot of nasty things that were said about him in Denver over the last 2 years and everything else. Man, that dude, he is as accurate. He's got a quick release. He throws the deep ball as well as anybody. He reads defenses. He's smart. I mean, they've got a big-time quarterback. So, the throw to Van Jefferson that, near the end of the game there, right?
That was awesome. That was an awesome throw.
Yeah, the throw to I forget what's the white dude, the receiver, the white guy, number 15. Yes, the throw to him, on the drive before was unbelievable. I mean, it was just, He sees the field. He scans the field. He made that throw. Was it to on the one touchdown to Freiermuth where he kind of found his way through the defense and then throw it, perfect strike. That guy is really good.
You mentioned how many different guys he was able to find today, Paul. I count 10 on the score sheet, and none of them were Mike Williams.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is I did see him out there a couple times, right?
Yeah, once Austin went out, he was getting more snaps, I noticed, but it still didn't register a catch today.
Here's what I would tell you I think is going on with him. I mean, you look at him, honestly, it feels to me like the Steelers have watched him at practice and they just don't think he's, going to give them much value other than running some go routes. And, what I mean? And if that's what your role is going to be, I'm going to run go routes for you. There's not going to be that many times we're going to throw it to you. It feels like they don't have a whole lot for him to do underneath. It feels like they just don't think he's that guy anymore and that they get more out of Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin underneath than they do with him. And that's to me where I look at and say, it's okay. They gave up basically nothing for him. And there might be a game down the road where, he catches a couple of touchdown passes because, he gets behind the defense a few times. That's kind of what his role is going to be. So it's pretty clear, at least to me, that's what the Steelers see him as.
Yeah, I'm trending that way too. It's just, of all the conversations you and I have had on our old Thursday show, on all these post-game shows about the receiver situation, it's kind of funny that they finally made a move, and then it seems to be resolving itself with the guys that they already liked. With Van Jefferson had the big catch today too, so I think it was one of the best games these receivers have played as a group all season. And listen, they've played some leaky defenses, and they didn't play this well, so you got to give them credit for stepping up, even if you have to adjust it for the Bengals and the opposition. Paul, we're going to get to the defense. Before we do, just want to thank a couple more sponsors. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. I also want to thank Archie's on Carson. The game's always on at Archie's, Pittsburgh's best place for food, drinks, and sports. Open Sundays for the game, 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. Be sure to check their daily drink specials and stop in for 80-cent wing nights Monday through Thursday. Tell them Paul Zeise sent you. Thank you to Archie's. Do you have to grade the defense today on a curve, Paul, based on the fact that you are facing just as like we're talking about the offense getting to face probably one of the worst defenses they'll see all season? The defense is facing probably one of the best attacks they're going to face all season. Do you have to grade them on a curve on some level and say you're going to give up yards, you're going to give up points, but at the end of the day, you made the plays you needed to make to win?
I don't necessarily know if I go as far as saying on a curve, but I thought that they made the plays they needed to make. I think they need to be better. One of the things I don't understand, Adam, and this is one of my pet peeves with this team, is that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin fall in love with playing zone defense, and they're not very good at playing zone defense. You know what I'm saying? They seem to give up a lot of yards when they play zone defense, and they especially when they're playing good receivers. What I think that I like is when they really dial up the heat and come after quarterbacks, and they play aggressively on the back end. Because to me, I just think when they sit in that zone, teams just, especially against a good quarterback, they get picked apart. Burrow is really good. I get it. And he's maybe one of the, what would you say? One of the 4 best quarterbacks in the league, probably. But, when they dialed up the heat on him and they got to him a little bit, he was less effective. So I just feel like it's one of these things that they probably need to play better than they did today. But they did what they had to do to win the game, and that matters too. Because again, what's funny is I just looked. The Bengals are on a 3-game losing streak, right, Adam? The Bengals have lost 3 games in a row. Which obviously, if they win those 3 games in a row, now all of a sudden they're 7-5 and right in the thick of it. The 3 games that they've lost in a row, they've scored. Let me do the math real quick. What is that? 65 and 90. They've scored 99 points in 3 games, and they're 0-3. So it is a good offense, and they did that, they did that against the Chargers too, which is a pretty good defense as well. So, that you knew they were going to give up some points, 37 probably, or 38 or whatever it is, probably a little excessive. But they, again, made big plays when they had to. The strip sack, the scoop and score. That was a scoop and score, but the strip kind of, I guess it would have been a sack by T.J. Watt. The interception. They made big plays when they needed to. And so to me, I just say that they have to be better than they were. But how many quarterbacks and receiver combinations are they going to face like the Bengals have? That's the larger question, if you ask me.
Right, and I think that leads in well to the Joey Porter conversation that's been going on in the comments. He's getting crushed, and I would just say, listen, he's got to clean up the penalties. I think Charles Davis made a good point on the broadcast of how, like, once you start getting a reputation, the refs are going to watch you closer, and you might have a game like you had today. I think the word of caution that I'd give is that this is a really good team that you were facing. You had two big weapons that you were having to guard on every play. They were basically one-dimensional for a lot of that game, Paul. After that first drive, I think Chase Brown had 53 yards on that first drive where he had the 40-yard run. Bengals finished with 93 yards, but I think they only had about 40 yards after that first drive. So it was a one-dimensional situation where you're facing Burrow, Chase, Higgins on every play. It's been an inconsistent season for Joey Porter. I think that's the bigger concern for me than the way he played individually today. It feels like it's fitting into a broader tapestry with him of the penalties, and that he has a good game, then he has a bad game. He has a good game and a bad game, and he's not been that kind of reliable number one that people are looking for him to be.
No, he hasn't. I actually, like I said, I think he's regressed a little bit. I thought he was actually better last year than he is this year. It seems like every game we're talking about it, and I think one of the things is referees are looking for it too. But one of the things I'll tell you is when you watch Joey Porter Jr. play, how many of those penalties weren't penalties? That's the larger issue. If we could sit here and say, this one was ticky-tack or that one was, ticky-tack, or, they're out to get him. But every penalty that I've seen against Joey Porter Jr. was a penalty. It was actually legitimately a penalty, including the play where he somehow managed to get a defensive holding and a pass interference on the same exact play. They were penalties. So I don't know if he's got to fix his technique. I don't know if he's got to work, with the Steelers on, working with his footwork and everything else, so he's a little bit less handsy and grabby. But he's going to continue to get calls like that until he stops doing it. Last year, I thought he got away with it a little bit. This year, he's not getting away with it.
Brian Batko in our chat just sent the videos that we're going to be posting on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel a little bit later. It's going to be what I do as soon as I get done with the stream. He says, the man of the hour, JPJ, takes no responsibility for flags. So I haven't listened to the comments yet, Paul, because I'm obviously talking to you, but sounds like he did not think that they were penalties the way you and I kind of – I thought there were a couple calls that were a little soft, that they could have – the way they were calling the game, they could have – look the other way on, but you don't get 6-7 flags in the NFL, just all phantom calls, do you, Paul?
No. And I think if that's his attitude, to me, if that's his attitude, it's going to be a long season, right? If he's not going to look in the mirror and he's not going to look at film and see what he's doing and everything else, I got to be honest with you. I just think that it's important now to note that, you got to change your attitude and you got to change what you're doing and change your technique. And if you don't, it's going to be a long, long season for you because you're going to continue to get bad calls like that.
Yeah, so stay tuned to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel, because as soon as I finish up here, I'm going to post that on the channel. Then you guys can all have the full context and react to it however you'd like. I guess this is another shameless plug. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that if you haven't already. Got a nice audience today here for a Sunday evening. Paul, a couple other things on the defense. Cam Hayward still making an impact. I feel like we just take him for granted sometimes. We don't talk about him on these shows. but he made some big plays today. Pretty smart that they, signed him to that contract that I think a lot of people were doubtful of, because he does look like he's got plenty left in him when he's still healthy.
No question. I mean, you meant Cam Hayward, right?
Yes, Cam Hayward.
Yeah, Cam Hayward. I mean, no question. He was really good, really impactful, made big plays, and he looks healthy. He looks like he's running well. He looks like he's moving well. Looks like he's making plays, up and down the field. And I think that's what you're looking for from Cam Hayward. He made a couple of plays, chasing guys down, made a couple of plays. He had that big play where he almost killed the guy in the backfield. He tipped the pass that turned into an interception. Yeah. I think if you look at Cam Hayward, he looks to me like a guy who is healthy, and he's really running well.
Yeah. Also want to thank Justin in the chat. Gave us a nice tip there. We appreciate it. Thank you very much for that, Justin.
Yeah, I was looking at that one.
Hope you enjoyed the game. We appreciate that. We don't. I might be the first time I've seen that on one of these, Paul. I wanted to ask you this, Paul. Would you rather have Deontay Johnson on this team, given the way things have shaken out at receiver, or Dante Jackson? I don't think Dante Jackson is a perfect cornerback. I think we've seen him get exploited at different times, but he's made plays for this defense as well. And just grading that trade, Paul, I think a lot of people treated Dante Jackson like he was going to be some throw-in to just get rid of Deontay Johnson. But I think he's been a meaningful piece of this defense. He's made some important plays, and I give him credit again. Makes another big play today.
Yeah. I think I honestly, watching Deontay Johnson this year, I mean, he's basically been a complete non-factor. Looks like he's regressed even more. I mean, Dante Jackson has been at least a useful piece. In fact, in many ways, he's probably been better than Joey Porter. So, yes, that trade is looking better and better as the weeks go on. I don't think he's the perfect corner. I think there's a lot of things about him that, we probably need to, take a look at and see if he can get better in certain areas. But I really believe that he's been much better than I thought he would be. And that's probably really what, all that matters, is that he's exceeded probably what they thought they were getting when they got him. And he's given them a legitimate another option at corner.
Paul, the pass rush gets home today a couple of times. I think there was some concern last week. I mean, they were getting lots of pressures, but they didn't get home on Jameis Winston, arguably cost them the game. But I think you got to be feeling a lot better about them after today, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, again, this was a hard game where you look at it and you say, I don't know what really to take from this game, other than a couple of things that you can say were good defensively. But the Bengals still made a lot of plays that really should be concerning. The Steelers did a couple of good things against them. But, boy, offensively, the Bengals really were able to move the ball almost at will. I mean, I feel like if T.J. Watt doesn't strip Joe Burrow there, that's a touchdown drive waiting to happen. It just feels to me like the Bengals were able to move the ball a little too easy against this defense.
Yeah, but like you said, Paul, they got that stop at the beginning of the first half. So that's one punt. Actually, I guess that is the only punt they forced today. Now that I'm scrolling down the play-by-play here, Bengals went touchdown. Or no, I'm reading backwards. That was in the first half when then that punt happened. Sometimes I don't know why they don't list it chronologically, but whatever. They only forced 1 point punt today, so I think that is fair. But I think there were some individual efforts that I think going forward, when you're not facing offenses of this caliber, you feel pretty good about. Paul, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I think it's another game where the Steelers did the most important thing, which was they won the turnover battle. That was, I think, significant, Adam, being able to be +2 in turnovers in a game like this where, neither defense really was getting stops. Those 3 turnovers are like stops. So to me, that was a huge part of why they won this game, is +2 in turnovers. And it's something the Steelers have done pretty much better than just about anybody else in the league this year. Take the ball away and don't give it away.
I agree. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Paul, you're going to be back the rest of the week. Paul does his 5 p.m. live stream. So if you enjoyed this experience, tune back in around 5 p.m. for the rest of the week. Get Paul's thoughts on this game against the Bengals. Get thoughts about the rematch with the Browns that's coming up. Also, a big week on the channel. Penn State is in the Big Ten championship game. So we'll have some college football to talk about. So subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, smash it, and help us out in the algorithm. We always appreciate that. Otherwise, we will talk to you again same time next week.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.